The background on the PowerPoint is, I made a light yellow, and it's that way on the computer screen, but up here, for some reason, it's blue. So hopefully it doesn't affect some of the slides that will be coming up here with the PowerPoint or whatever. We're going to be talking about a single word this morning. I will apologize to you up front. I'm not near as prepared as what I would like to be this morning. Sorry, I took a day off this week. My son asked me to go fishing with him. How could I turn that down? I was actually was hoping that I would have a picture of a large bass in my hand to display for you this morning, just so that we could talk about a one word, being maybe envy on your part, just kind of rubbing it in just a little bit, but I didn't catch a big bass. So it scratched that little idea there. But we're going to be taking 2 weeks on this here message this morning. It's just has a title that's just, like I said, it's one word. You want to make any guesses on what that one word could be? Probably not, because there's a lot of one words out there, right? Yeah. As I was studying for this message, though, and thinking about this one particular one word, it hit me just how powerful just one word can be. How all of us react to that one word differently. We respond maybe to it differently. Think about it. These aren't what we're going to be talking about this morning, but one word: love, hate, happiness, joy. They do something to you. It's just one word, but there's images that come right away to you. Or stress, anxiety, worry, fear. We've talked about them over the last few weeks with this, going through this pandemic and so forth. Just one word, just a single word, but yet they stir something up inside of us. Words like marriage, work, or career. We react differently to these words because they draw images into our mind from our past experiences. They might be positive, they might be negative experiences. But how we focus on those really translates into our personality and the reason why we're maybe optimistic, bouncy like Tigger, or maybe pessimistic like all doom and gloom like Eeyore. How we focus on those experiences in these one words make up our personality and how we handle them. But the one word that we're going to be focusing on this week and next week isn't any of these. I'm not real sure, but I'm pretty sure, well, actually, I'm pretty confident that every one of you have experienced this one word. Maybe reluctantly, but you have used this word in your lifetime, I would dare say, more than one time. And you probably will be using it again in the coming days. I was thinking about how to introduce this word, and I couldn't help but think of letting the Beatles introduce this one word, because it's a name of one of their songs. Any guesses? The movie made out of it? Yeah, that's right. Help. Help. I need somebody. Help. Not just anybody. Help. You know I need someone. Help. Help. It's one of the most powerful, and think about it, it's one of the most emotional cries that's in our English language. Help. But we also kind of fight against using this word, don't we? Even in the simplest things in life. Like I said, just this week, Tyler had asked me to go fishing. Now, keep in mind that I haven't been fishing for, 5, 6 years, something along that line. So my casting was not exactly accurate. And there were times, a number of times, that my spinnerbait would find a little limb and it would wrap around that limb and I would be hung up. And I hated to make Tyler stop his fishing to back the boat up so that I could retrieve my lure. Even something that small. I had thrown that lure there. I had thrown it in the wrong place. It was my fault. It was my mistake. It was my blunder. And I hated to have Tyler stop, back the boat up to help me retrieve my lure. Just a simple thing like that. This is one of the most powerful one words can be, or this is how powerful that one word can be. Pastor James Merritt describes this word in this way. The ultimate admission that a position of humility has finally been attained. The ultimate admission that a position of humility, and we don't react just real well to that one word, has finally been attained. For the most part, it's only the humble, the humbled, the broken that dare to use this word. Help. The proud and the arrogant don't have that word in their vocabulary, really. Help. It's the cry of a mother with 4 children, 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a parakeet that's left for a week at home while her husband is away on a business trip in Hawaii. It's a cry of a student who has studied for their final exam only to realize that they have studied the wrong chapters. Help. It's the cry of a man sitting at a table in his kitchen, surrounded by a stack of unpaid bills. The cupboards are empty. The bank account is empty. And there seems to be no job in sight. It's the cry of a teenage boy whose self-esteem is found in drug-induced stupors, and whose best friend is a hypodermic needle and strong nostrils. I'm pretty sure that these have reminded you of times in your life when things haven't gone the best. When maybe you were very, very, very low. Maybe multiple times that's happened to you, I don't know. But in those moments, as a last-ditch effort to solve your problem, you cry out, help. There's an old familiar story that I've shared with you in the past, and you've heard others share, and I'm going to share it again because it's so fitting here. It's a familiar story to us about a man that was walking on the edge of a cliff, too close to the edge. And some ground gave way and he slipped and he fell over the side of the cliff. About a third of the way down, he reached out and by chance happened to grab a vine that was growing into the face of the cliff. And as he was hanging there dangling 100 feet or so from his death, he began to cry out, help, help, somebody help me. All of a sudden there was this deep voice was heard from heaven, and it said, "My son, I will help you." And the man says, "Oh, dear God, I'm so glad to hear your voice. I'm so grateful that you are offering to help me. Please get me out of this predicament. I know I shouldn't have been walking that close, but I need your help." And God says, "I will, if you will do exactly what I ask you to do." The man said, "Oh God, I'll do anything you ask. Just get me out of this mess." God said, "Let go of the vine." I have this picture in my mind of the man wanting to unplug his ears, but afraid to let go of the vine to unplug his ears. And he says, "What?" God says, "Let go of the vine." And the guy's response is, "You've got to be kidding me." God said, "If you want me to save you, let go of that vine." Well, if you were there and could see the picture of the man, you could see that he goes deep into thought for a moment. Then he looks up to heaven and he says, "Is there anyone else up there?" And we chuckle at that. We kind of inside have a little smile that takes place. But we know what that feeling's like. We've been at that place to where we just feel like we're dangling by a thread. And God asks us to let go of it. But we're holding on so tight because we think that that is our security. That is where we find stability, where we're safe. And God says, let go of the vine. In Psalms 121, the psalmist here is in serious need of help. Evidently, he is in such a pickle that there's no other place to turn to but to God. And out of this experience, God teaches this psalmist 3 lessons, 3 truths that we can apply to our lives. Three truths that will help us build an ark, that will help us to be carried on the stormy seas, being tossed around. Help us in facing the fierce headwinds that are blowing against us. Helping us to ride over the overwhelming intensity of the chaos that is all around us, that's flooding everything that we can see. Times when we are going to have to rely on and trust God, because He is our only hope. So let's read Psalms 121, verses 1 through 4, where we're going to focus this week, and then 5 through 8 we'll focus on next week. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. And the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forever. Forevermore. Excuse me. Truth 1 we can pull out of this is the Lord is my provider. The Living Bible translation translates verses 1 and 2 in this here way. Shall I look to the mountain gods for help? No, my help is from Jehovah, who made the mountains and the heavens too. The answer to our problem, to the problem that you and I personally face, that our families, our churches, government faces, even in this time of pandemic, the answers are not going to be found in the mountain gods or the humanistic living around us. Jeremiah had already warned the nation of Israel this in Jeremiah 3:23. Surely the idolatrous, that's a delusion, a noisy worship of false gods is how some other translations put that. Adulterous commotion on the hills and mountains is a deception. Surely in the Lord our God is the salvation of Israel. King James puts it this way: truly in vain is salvation hoped for from the hills and from the multitude of mountains. Truly in the Lord our God is the salvation of Israel. At times in our lives, we're going to be shaken. We're going to be shaken by the tremors of the trials and the troubles and tribulations that we are facing, that we go through. When we feel the ground literally shaking underneath of our feet, unstable, hard to stand up. It's in those moments that God will give us the three things that we need to be overcomers. And that first thing is security. My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. Can you think of anyone you would rather have as your helper than God, who created this universe? The God that is higher than the hills, he's mightier than the mountains, he's above all the armies, he's greater than everyone and everything. Someone writes in Proverbs, the great God who formed all things. Jeremiah in 32:31 says, Ah, Lord God, behold, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. There is nothing too hard for you. Look, the God that created the world is also in control of the world. And he can do anything in or for this world that he chooses. This is the God that is our help in our trouble. This is God our hope in a time of tragedy. This is our God is our source of strength and courage when we face tribulations that Jesus tells us we will face. If I would, just let this seep deep into my mind, just how powerful the creator of the universe is, we would realize that our God, our Father, is the only source of help that we need. Think about this. Our sun, don't literally look at the sun, but just figurative. Look at our sun. It's a ball of fire that astronomers classify as a moderate star. Just an average sized star. Yet its diameter is 864,000 miles. Contrast that to Earth, that little dot. The Earth's diameter is 7,926 miles. Not anywhere close to that 864,000 miles is the diameter of our sun. But it's not solid. It's all gas. It's 2 billion tons of gas. There is the crushing weight of 1 million pounds of matter over every square inch of the sun's core. In fact, the only thing they say that keeps the core of the sun from collapsing is energy. Unbelievable floods of energy that raise the sun's internal temperature to 25 million degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I'm not too sure how they got that thermometer in there to test that, but that's what they say. The sun consumes 657 million tons of hydrogen each second. Yet, it has been calculated that the sun can go on burning for another 50 billion years. That massive space heater that's in the sky, think about it. It could not even raise one drop of sweat on the brow of our God, the Creator, the one that spoke our sun into existence. We had some pretty good storms go through here in Texarkana last night in this area. So I knew this was coming up this morning because I had somewhat prepared. So it's kind of fitting. You have a last night experience to understand this. Take a single bolt of lightning, okay? Did you know that the lightning flash that you see is caused by the lightning bolt heating the air molecules in its path to 30,000 degrees Celsius? That's 5 times the temperature of the sun's surface. That bolt is only 2 inches across. But it can have, but you can only see it. Let me go back on that. You can only see it for 300 millionths of a second. That's how quick that flash is. But there can be up to 40 strokes 2 inches wide in a single channel of lightning. Now think about the power that's in that one lightning bolt. A stroke may have up to 1 billion volts and 1,000 million kilowatts of power. Now, maybe that doesn't mean anything to you. Let's bring that down to a household level. A normal house current, we know, is 110 or 220 volts. And the amount of power used by one household is normally about 1,000 kilowatts per month. So, what do you do the math with that? If we could harness the power of one lightning bolt, we could supply the power to 1 billion homes for a month. Now you add that to the fact that approximately 2,000 thunderstorms are happening around the world at any moment, at any time. And a typical storm has 1 to 3 lightning flashes every minute. What does that do to our ideas of the power that comes into our home? It could supply the power to every home in the world, or to 1 billion homes in the world for 50 years, I think was what I calculated that out to be. But that one stroke, that one bolt of lightning that can create a crater in a solid rock, can destroy a forest, that shakes the earth, can vaporize a human body, could not cause a solitary goosebump to come up on God's little finger. He created that. That great, that wonderful, all-powerful God is the God that the Bible says is our ever-present help in time of trouble. The second thing that we need here is stability. We see this in the 3rd verse of Psalms 21. He will not allow your foot to be moved. Every now and then there's hardship that hits us with this right cross, and it just hits us flush on the jaw. You might be staggered. You might wobble a little bit, but you will not fall, because it is God who will not allow your foot to be moved. Other versions say trapped, ensnared there. Another version says, or what it literally means is not to slip. What a wonderful promise. Read about it again in Proverbs 3. Do not be afraid of sudden tremors, the NIV says sudden disaster, nor of trouble that from the wicked when it comes. Why? For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught, from being ensnared. What is the old hymn that we sang? On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. Christ in the closing of his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7 tells us to put these things that he has said into practice. And if we do, we are like the wise man that built his house upon the rock. The storms came, but the house stood firm. The feet that are standing on the solid rock of ages can never slip nor stumble. They can stand firm like we are told to stand. When others are falling around us, falling like flies, the man of God who stands with God will not fall. He will stand firm. The third thing that we need is serenity. That's calmness, peace of mind. Verses 3 and 4. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Look, no parent can watch over their children every moment of 24 hours in the day. But God does. You ever heard the old saying, out of sight, out of mind? Well, that saying never applies to our God, our Father. You are never out of his sight, and you are never out of his mind. God is watching over us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and however long your life is throughout eternity. I guess we could put it this way: God does not practice social distancing, even though we do. That sounds like a sermon in the future, maybe. The reason why we should be able to sleep at night is because we know that God is on duty. He's watching over us. When David was being pursued by his own son, when there was a wanted dead poster, not wanted dead or alive, wanted dead poster out on him, he wrote in Psalms 4:8, I will both lie down and sleep in peace. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. I read about a lady that went through, lived in London and was going through the experiences of World War II when the Germans were bombing London night after night. And I read about there was one particular stretch there that it just really devastated a whole lot of the city. And the next morning, the citizens were searching through the ruins for the injured. for the dead and for those that were missing that they just couldn't find. And there was this one lady, an older lady, that lived by herself, a grandmother, that everyone loved, but they couldn't find her. They'd looked everywhere. And then finally someone found her. She was soundly sleeping in her bed, in her little bedroom. They woke her up and said, "Mrs. Smith, how could you sleep through all that bombing that was going on?" And this is what she said. "Well, it says in the Bible, 'He who keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep.' So I figured that there was no need for both of us to stay up all night, and I went to bed." But faith, that's where her help comes from the Lord. So we need to ask ourselves today, who or what is our default that we go to when we're needing security? We're needing to feel safe. When we're needing stability, something solid to stand on that supports us, to be able to stand firm on. When we're needing that serenity, just that peacefulness, that stillness, that calmness. What is it that you go to as your default? You just immediately go to. So many of us go to whatever that is. And once we get there, find out it's not the solution. And then all of a sudden we're ready to remember the Holy Spirit talking to us, saying that God is our help in times of trouble. So who do you call on first in your troubles? Who do you cry out help to first? You know where your help comes from. I know where my help comes from. This message isn't just another message. We know this. Everything I've said, maybe not the sun stuff, or lightning stuff. You probably did. I didn't. But we've heard this message before. We know this. This is just one of those things that we need to be reminded of. That it hasn't maybe sunk deep enough into our being to be our default when times are tough. We just needed to be reminded of it because we misplaced that information in our little minds. The psalmist is very familiar with this. And this is what reminds us. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? Where did you look for your help? Did it come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth, of all things, the maker of me, the maker of you, that knitted you together in your mother's womb. He will not let your foot slip. He won't let you be trapped, ensnared. He who watches over you will not slumber. He sees. Indeed, he watches over Israel, will neither slumber nor sleep. Let that sink in. Let that sink in for this day, for the rest of your life. That makes a difference, doesn't it? Let it make a difference in the rest of this Sabbath day, this day of rest. He knows. He's watching. He is our help. Whether we realize it or not. But as we turn to him and we cry out, help, he hears and he responds. And knowing that, we can face the rest of the day and the rest of life with confidence. And go through it singing, I've got a peaceful, easy feeling. I know you won't let me down, because I'm already standing on solid ground. That's your Savior, your Creator, your Father watching over you. Father, I thank you for this reminder for myself and for us. Father, forgive me for all the times I forget this. Forgive me for the times of being so stubborn and not turning to you for the help that I need and trusting your wisdom. Father, I pray for each one of us that is hearing this. Father, that you would use your Spirit to really help us to get the cobwebs out and let this sink in and take root in us. That you are our ever-present help. Not just in times of trouble, but at all times. Father, I pray that for each one of us now, for the rest of this day, we'd be able to rest in that. And Father, that as we go through the rest of this week and the rest of this year, the rest of this time of social distancing that we're uncomfortable with, Father, we would turn to you and say, thank you for this reminder. You haven't left us. We're not on our own. And what you're crying out to us, yelling out to us is, let go of the vine. I've got this. In Jesus' name, amen.